Okay, I'm here. I'm going to take this off because we're socially distanced. Oh, I've pulled everything off now. We're socially distanced for my first and only live bookshop appearance at Eltham Bookshop, my local and amazing Eltham Bookshop for the Mother Fault. Okay, I'm here, Meera. Go.
Hello,
Ask
Kate.
me questions.
There's been a lot of excitement today. Just the boxes behind you. And
The box has
everything
just
coming
arrived.
together.
It's amazing.
Everything was timed. So thank you for coming along.
It's my
and
pleasure.
It's been a long time since we've seen a writer inside the bookshop. So you're doubly welcome.
Oh, and it feels very nice to be among books.
Thank you. Yes, I know. We are looking a bit different, as you can see, from how you would be otherwise. But anyway, so today is a very big day for us and for our community, for Eltham, for the world. So always the birth of a book is such an important moment because every book brings stories with itself which haven't been told before. So thank you for Mother Fault.
Oh, thank
and
you.
as you know, thank you for Skylarking before that.
Got them
These
both
two
here.
books, yeah.
Just arrived.
That's right. So Skylarking and Mother Fault, two very different books, Kate. Was this a deliberate choice to create two different story worlds? One is set in the past, one is like a speculative world. What did you learn about storytelling from doing these two different kind of books?
Well, it was very deliberate, Meera. So I loved writing historical fiction for Skylarking, but I very much wanted to write something new and to stretch myself. So I knew that I wanted to move away from historical fiction, and the story of Mim and someone who was fleeing Australia presented itself, and I knew that it was going to be some kind of dystopia. What was amazing about writing Skylarking is that because it was a true story, it was easy for me as a writer to follow the skeleton of the story, whereas for this one, for the Mother Fault, it was a blank page and I could do whatever I wanted. So I did find that a bit overwhelming. And, you know, obviously it took a little bit longer for me to write this one. Skylarking only took me, you know, a year and a half. This one's taken 4 years from start to end. But I got there.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Despite the virus, despite everything.
Despite everything.
Yes. So tell me, when you were writing Mother Fault, because this was written, as you say, 4 years ago, what sort of mood were you in?
A lot of what spurred on the writing of the Mother Fault was the energy around motherhood and mothering my two young daughters. So the joys and frustrations and everything in between of motherhood. So that was a real force behind it. The question that began the story for me was one that was filled with rage, which was about how we were treating asylum seekers who were coming to this country and how governments all around the world were doing that. So I was, I suppose there was fury at that, and also a question which was, how would I go about protecting my kids? And what would I do? So I think worries and fears were part of it, as well as that energy of wanting to get down the very humdrum daily experience of motherhood on the page as well. So a little bit of all of those things.
You know, because at the present moment, this is a book of our times and for our times. So how does a storyteller find it in their bones that the world needs to read this kind of story that you have fleshed out in Mother Fault? How much in tune with politics, with history, with media does a writer have to be?
I think they have to be very much in tune with those things. I think that's part of our responsibility as artists. And a number of people have said to me, you know, the book is so prescient and how did you get it? And it's unbelievable the way that you've created a world that is so much like today. And it wasn't. I mean, I didn't know there was a pandemic coming. It certainly wasn't. I had no idea of those things coming. But what I do know is that I do stay in tune with the news. I do stay in tune with the things that are going on around the world and the things that worry me and stress me, like authoritarian governments, like the ways in which we are so willing to give over power and control sometimes to others and unquestioning. So those are the kinds of things that I pay attention to. And I think in terms of the climate crisis, it's essential that we're paying attention to that. And so that's why, even though it's not at the forefront of the book, I knew that I couldn't write a book that was either contemporary or near future without addressing that as well.
Because, you know, in the book there's a great Orwellian sense of chill. And, you know, as a reader, I felt myself compelled to say, I will never let this world come to this. You know, I read 1984 when I was a teenager, and I thought I'd never let the world come to this. And I find myself, I'm 69 now, saying the same story again. And I'm so glad that you are saying it as well in your book. Can you share some of your writerly skills that create this bond between the writer and the reader, that we get the message perhaps that you were trying to convey?
Thank you. That's lovely of you to say, Meera. I think that I wanted the reader to feel stressed, terrified. I wanted them to feel all the feelings. As a reader, that's what I love when I'm reading. I want to, you know, have that moment where I want to throw the book across the room, or where I'm so deep into it. And I knew that the ways to do that would be to keep raising the stakes for my character, but also for them to truly care. I don't really care about that idea of characters being relatable. I think from what I'm hearing from women particularly, that Mim is very relatable, but I don't think a character ought to be. But I did want characters to care. I did want readers, to care about what happened to Mim, about what happened to the kids. And I think as soon as you've got them caring, then it's just your job to raise the stakes. I also really did want to play with that idea of it being a very near future. So for people to really think, oh, hang on a second, that could be what's already happening. And certainly the things that I put in the book about surveillance and ideas like that are happening in other places in the world. So I wanted that in there as a chilling kind of aspect.
Certainly a huge emotional and intellectual investment for every reader in this book. Tell me a little bit about the fact that, you know, you have been reading all your life. I know that because I'm by appointment.
You've sold me all the books.
Because I'm the appointment bookseller to 4 generations of your family. I think I have on my records what you read when you were 16 or 17. But tell me how reading has continued to shape you both as a writer and as a citizen of the world.
Oh, I think that I've thought about this so much during lockdown, because books have really kept us sane and connected, and they've been such a comfort to both my kids and to my partner and to myself. Books that we've read for comfort, and books that we've also read to stay connected. And I think that there's a sense that as a writer now, I would hope that I'm in conversation with other books, and that I continue that conversation. So books that were so influential while I was writing The Mother Fault were Charlotte Wood's The Natural Way of Things, books like James Bradley's Clade or Mairead Cow's The World Beneath Us, books that I aspire. I talked today about Anne Enright's The Gathering and wanting to hit the tone of her ending, books that I aspire to be like. So I think I want to be in conversation with books, and honestly, I need a year. I just need a year without anything happening, which is kind of like what happened this year, to catch up on the books that I want to read.
Yes. So now to talk about place, we talk about your characters, but you grew up in this village, and tell me how growing up in this part of Melbourne, part of Australia, part of the world, has shaped your vision of the world.
Well, I think first I'm very lucky that this has been my local bookshop the entire time. I, married a boy from high school. My best friends are still those that I had in high school, and I've returned to live in this place as well. My parents still live where we lived when we were young. So I think that sense of community and home here is very intensely strong. And that's certainly something that I wanted to examine in The Mother Fault as well, how we make a place home, and it is a place home because of the people who are there or because of the place that it is. I think that we're very lucky, especially now during COVID, to live on this country, this Wurundjeri kind of country, which is so beautiful, and there's so much space here for us to be in. And I think it's an extraordinary community. There are lots of artists here. There are writers here. The writers that you've brought me together with, Meera, through the bookshop, who are now my Rotary Coven, Penny Russin, Penny Harrison, and Zana Fralin. It's just an extraordinary place to create and to raise a family, I think.
I just find that, we breathe so much better here.
We do. And we do breathe better here as well.
I think if we breathe, we can write better too. So now to the title of your book. I remember the day it was announced, there was a bit of a conversation at the door. And of course, we were not so cloistered then. And there were 3 customers and there were 3 views on why it was called The Mother Fault. It was fascinating, And of course, when it came out, my first conversation in the town square was about the book as I was putting the poster up. So tell me, you have a great experience of being with a grandmother, mother, mother-in-law, sister, your daughters, this vital connection between women. How has it helped you to create your amazingly brave protagonist with all her fallibility and all her eerie determination?
Well, I think, I've used a part of a Gwen Harwood poem for the epigraph, Mother Who Gave Me Life, and that's always been a favourite poem, and it's about that idea of passing on, generationally passing on the strength of women. Yes, I've been raised by incredible women. I've got incredible women in my life. I think in terms of this title, and I loved how you said that a woman in the street said to you, it's always a mother's fault. And that's exactly it. I think when the title came to me and I was playing around with all different things, geological ideas of tectonic plates shifting and fault lines and things like that, as well as this idea that it is, of course, always a mother's fault. Society says it, we tell ourselves that. And this idea that there is this great kind of rupture in Mim between her past self and what she sees as her future self, her non-mother self and her mother self, and the way that she has to bring that together, I think is why it's a title that I do hope starts conversations as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to end on asking you a question which I'm sure lots of people have asked who've had the pleasure and the privilege of reading an advanced copy. And that is to say, this book is not going to end here. No, you can't laugh it off.
You're not the first person who said it, Meera.
So what's the plan?
Well, what's the plan? The plan is I'm currently writing my next novel, and it is not a sequel to The Mother Fault. It's something entirely different. What I love is having that conversation with readers already who are saying, okay, but what do you think happens next? And I love the ambiguity of leaving, and I don't think it's not entirely an ambiguous ending, but I do love leaving it with readers to say, well, you take it with her from here. You take it from here. Writing a book is such an intense experience, and with this, as much as I am saying to myself, I don't know what I'll do without Mim, also it took my whole self to get this down. So, but I love, I had Astrid Edwards, who does The Garret and who's a big spec fic fan, said, speculative fiction, you always have to have a sequel. Like, you've got to write a sequel. So never say never, I will say.
Well, thank you for letting us make up our own stories after this. But and thank you very much for bringing us this gift of this book, Kate.
Thank you, Meera.
It means a lot to the world at this time, and stories particularly. From the bookshop, I want to say a big thank you. We've got a few flowers from the garden.
We've got flowers, and I'm going to show, look at my beautiful cakes.
There's little orange